Hi, and you're welcome back to The Simple Creative. I'm your host, Oladimeji Ajegbile, and this is a podcast for those brave enough to start up something from nothing. Let me correct myself. This podcast is for you, the person who is trying to start up something from nothing. You're very passionate about what you want to start, and you really want it to be something remarkable, something people want to see. And I believe this podcast is the one for you, because here we get to sit with amazing persons who have been able to do this particular thing of starting up something from nothing. And on this podcast, they get to share their experiences, they take us through their journey and show us exactly how they did it and how you also can do it. So this is the very last episode for the season 4 of The Simple Creative, and it's quite a special one because here we get to have this Ask Me Anything session. So a couple of you asked me questions on Instagram about my life, about my work, about The Simple Creative, and the people you'd love to see more on The Simple Creative podcast. And I'll be answering all your questions on this particular episode. So if you're new here, I welcome you specially and enjoy the episode. So there's this thing I appreciate a lot, and that is community. And when I put up all these question stickers on social media and you guys responded, it was just mind-blowing because I could see how lots of questions poured in, and it was really remarkable for me because I was able to understand that a lot of people see what I do and it benefits them, and they want to see me succeed and at the same time help them achieve the same results. And I really appreciate you for all the questions you asked. There were a lot of questions, and I was able to group them based on interest and similarities. And there were some that actually piqued my interest, and I'll be starting with those ones. So the very first question here is from Lois Ogbe. She's also a podcaster, and she asks, how old are you? This is a very simple question, to be honest. I'm 25 years old. I know it doesn't show, right? I look quite young. Yeah, I'm 25 years old. So that being said, all right, now the next question is from Great, and it says that I'm just really tired. Any advice? Every time I've talked about, people who are tired, or you're stressed, or you have anxiety, or all those things are similar, because I've done a lot of justice to these on my YouTube channel. But talking about you being tired, I think one of the most important things you'd learn or first understand is that your health is as important as your work, or it's even more important than your work. So if you spend all your time working without rest, eventually when you break down, realize this, that someone else will come, fill your position and do it way better than you can. So my advice to you right now is take rest. Like, rest, don't kill yourself. I remember when I had my period of anxiety and burnout over a year ago now. I remember a friend said to me and said, Dimeji, you've been working hard, burning yourself out and doing all these things. If you break down tomorrow, someone else somewhere would come, fill in your position and do your job better than you can. So if you die today, someone else will come and do your work better than you can. So he said to me in his last word, he said, remember that dead men don't work. So take care of yourself, don't kill yourself, rest, and really give yourself the required and necessary rest you need. And I think that's one of the best I have for you. Great, that please take some rest. Give yourself rest, because if you don't take care of your mental health, your physical health, your general well-being, it will take a toll on your work, and eventually you will be on the losing end. Because if you can't take care of your health, if you can't take care of yourself, if you can't take care of your own body, how can you take care of someone else's work or someone else's brand or whatever job it is you do? So my advice for you right now is, if you're tired, rest, because that is like that's like the way it is. If you're hungry, you eat. If you're thirsty, you drink. And if you're tired, you rest. So please rest. And if the tiredness is coming from you not being able to achieve what you want to achieve, it's the same process. Take some rest. Take a while away from that particular thing and just do something else. And I believe it will really help you come to a point where you can say, yes, now I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. And it really help you make more sense out of everything you're doing. So take some rest, take a break, and replenish your strength, your energy, and everything you do. Now, the next question here is from Wisdom. And it says that if you have only one word to say to a young creative for life, what would it be and why? This is a very interesting question, because this is something I said to myself when I first started creating content actively on Instagram. And the very first thing I told myself is, Dimeji, you need to live life to the fullest. So if it is one word, I would say live. Because the truth is, a lot of us get caught up in this world of fast. Like, we want everything to be quick and fast without really cherishing the now. We focus too much on the future and we forget or we neglect the beauty and the blessings in the moment. So I'll just tell you that as a creative, please learn to enjoy the present, because it's in the present that you require and you get answers for the future. But if you neglect the present, it will come back to bite you in the future, because the future would ask and demand the results and the answers you got from your present. So live life to the fullest, and that single word is live. I think I've answered that. All right, the next question now is from Sharon B. Peters, and she says that you're so good with consistency when it comes to your brand. Any top tips? Now, with consistency, talking about my brand, my personal brand is such that I try to help creatives simplify the creative process. And it dawned on me that every single time I've taken out time to do this thing I've been doing over time again and again, I realized one thing, that moving from a consistency-based routine to a necessity-based routine was what really helped me stay consistent like I have been, or what people call consistency, because it shifted from me being consistent or wanting to be consistent to becoming a necessity. I started asking questions that before I used to ask questions like, what am I supposed to do today? But then it changed to, what should I be doing today? Before it was, what am I supposed to be doing? And then it changed to, what should I be doing? Because there's already a list of things that are permanent for me to always do. For example, every day or every Tuesday or Monday, I release a podcast episode. Every Tuesday, I release a newsletter. Every Wednesday, a podcast episode drops. Every Thursday, a recap of the podcast episode plays. Every Friday, I do a dedicated live session. And every other day, I must release 1 or 2 pieces of content on Instagram or on social media. And that has been a trend. It shifted from just being a everyday thing to becoming a daily activity, to becoming a system. So I moved from having goals to having systems. Systems in the sense that it is not part of my everyday activity. It is not part of me. It is a way of life already. If I don't release a content in one day, I feel incomplete. I don't know why, but that's just where I am. So moving from it being just consistency to becoming necessity is what really made me this consistent. And I believe if you can switch it up and do what feels natural to you, then I think that's like the most interesting tip I can give right now. Do what feels natural to you. To me, creating this content every time, not giving up, is what feels natural to me, because I'm the kind of person who just enjoys being productive. So to be consistent, do what feels natural to you, and let's continue. Let it continue. If your consistency can be doing something once in 3 days, fine. If it is once a week, fine. It doesn't have to be every day, but if you want to go every day, if it works for you, fine. Go ahead and try that. So, now the next question here is from Brand Niger, and the question is, how can a creative stay motivated always? Now, this is very similar to another question that says, what is the greatest motivation when you feel like your goals aren't clear or aren't coming through? Now, putting these two questions together, I would say that number one is waiting for motivation before you act is a trap. Because what if you wait 7 weeks and you don't get motivated? It happens. You might be at the edge of burnout, and looking for motivation is just like you wanting the easy way out. So instead, take action. After taking action, motivation would come, and then it will eventually lead to inspiration. So when you don't have the motivation to reach your goals, or not seeing that your goals are clear enough, I think one key to this is moving from a goal-based way of life to a system-based way of life. I'll explain that right now. Now, working with systems gives you the freedom to take things every day as though it is a part of your life. But working with goals makes it something you feel you can never reach. I'll give an example. So in 2019, I made this resolution and goal to read 12 books in 2019. And breaking that down, that means I'll read a book every month. Now that seemed far-fetched because as a creative before, I never used to read books. So creating that particular goal seemed impossible for me. So I decided to work on a system-based routine. And When I read this book by James Clear, Atomic Habits, that was what gave me this idea. By breaking these things down into systems, into little steps that can really help me achieve that goal. So what I did was this. I told myself that, look, every morning, because I know reading is difficult for me, so every morning when I wake up, I will read 30 minutes in the morning. At night, I'll read 15 minutes before bed. And I'll do this every other day. And when I started, it was quite difficult because the very first month, it was difficult to keep up with the morning routine and the night routine. So at the end of the very first month, I read just one book in the very first month, when my original goal was to read 2 books every month throughout 2019. But that was still fair because I was able to finish one book in 27 days. So the next time, which was February, I picked up the first book, and then I became more serious with reading 30 minutes in the morning, reading 15 minutes at night. And then it soon got me to the point where I could finish a book in 15 days. And then later on, getting to October, I could finish a book within 7 days. And that was amazing that I could finish 3 books in a month. So altogether, at the end of 2019, I read 17 books when my original goal was to read 12. So you can see how breaking these things down into systems was able to help me. So if you're not getting motivation, take action and break your goals into systems. I believe this will really help you move from just wanting to achieve to actually achieving these things and surpassing those goals, like by several other feats. So move from goals to systems. Your systems will help you achieve your goals, but if you only stick with goals, it is impossible. It might be difficult, not impossible. It might be difficult for you to achieve those goals. So you can decide to read this book by James Clear. It will give you a better understanding of what I just explained, working with systems instead of goals. Now, the next question here is from Zurjman. It says, are you still practicing architecture in any form, and why? So most of you don't know this, but my first and second degree was in architecture, and the reason why I decided to take a break from architecture was to actually explore design beyond buildings, because learning architecture made me realize that architecture is only about the buildings, and now I wanted to understand design based on as a way of life, as a way we live our lives every other day. So I took a break in 2017 from studying architecture or from practicing architecture to wanting to understand design as a way of life. And since then, I realized that our life as creatives is meant to portray design at every point in time, from the clothes you wear to the color of your t-shirt, from the way you arrange your space and all these things. It is all design, but limiting design to buildings only is quite not interesting to me. So exploring has given me this opportunity to see design beyond just buildings and seeing it as a way of life. And I still practice, If you look at my space right now, I designed this myself. I still design interior for people. You can check OA Spaces on Instagram. That is where I share all the designs I've done about interior. And these are the things I do every other day that really makes me still practice architecture. Now, I will still, practice architecture as a career later on in my life. I'm still young, so I'm 25. Maybe when I'm 30 or 35, I'll probably just go fully into architecture and start practicing. But right now, I'm still trying to see how design is in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day activities. So yes, I practice architecture, but on the personal level, when it comes to me creating my spaces, I built all my furniture myself. I built my spaces myself. I painted the rooms and everything, did everything myself, because I know my part of architecture and how it affects my life, and seeing it as a way of life, not just as buildings only, has given me that necessary effect I needed. So yes, I still practice. Now the next question here is, when you first started, what was your setup like? When I first started, to be honest, my setup wasn't pretty. It was just a table, a plastic table, and a chair. I think if you can look back, you will see the chair, the blue chair just behind me here. It was that chair I was using then, a plastic chair and just a plastic table with my laptop. I only had my laptop there, and I did have a monitor. I did have all this gear and everything, and that was in October 2018. So I became really dissatisfied with working in my bedroom, because it was easy to just move from the bed, or from the work table to the bed, and that was really disinteresting. So I decided to move out and get a better space. And moving into a big space, I only had a plastic table and a chair. And then I started to work little by little, got new jobs, made some money, and then I was able to build this entire space. So my setup right now is what I was able to accumulate over the space of 2 years. So yeah. So at first it wasn't pretty, but then over time it became what it became. So yeah. Now the next question is from Brand Niger, and it says that how can one be disciplined as a creative? How can one be disciplined as a creative? Now I would say that discipline is a personal thing, because you need to be able to first define what your own meaning of discipline is. What is discipline to you? For me, discipline is just as simple as being consistent with what I've dedicated my time and effort to. Being intentional with the decisions I make. So for you, first define what is discipline to you. Is discipline making sure that you wake up 10 a.m. in the morning, or 9 a.m. in the morning, or 6 a.m. in the morning? It depends. It's not a one size fits all kind of a thing. So figure out what discipline is to you, and then once you figure that out, you can then apply it to every other part of your life. And I would say that discipline should be as simple as what you do every day, the actions, the intentional actions you take. That is what discipline should be. So figure that out, and I think you'll be able to, really live a creative life to the fullest. Now the next question here is, all right, so this is from Jamak, and he says, how can I become creative like you? How can I become creative like you? Now this question seems a little bit out of place, and at the same time very important to answer, because you can't be creative like someone else, because you are unique in your own way. So what I would tell you is find that gold in yourself, find that uniqueness in you, and decide to master it and bring it out. So 3 things I'll tell you. Number 1, figure out that thing you do effortlessly, that creative nature in you that can be brought out to the open. And then once you figure that out, the next thing now is practice it. Just try to be good at that particular thing. Continually do it over time to make sure that everything you do about this particular thing, you can say that, yes, I know what I'm doing. And then after that, then move to the next one, where you can now say that, oh, I have to show this thing to the world, because nobody can say you are creative if they don't see the result. So pick those results, let people see it, and then you can really start to live a creative life. So I wouldn't say you should want to become creative like someone. You can learn from them, that is fine. But then to be creative, it has to be something from you, something from within you. How can you be unique in your own way? You are unique in your own way. So wanting to copy someone else is a no-no. So don't ask, how can I be creative like you? Instead, ask, how can I bring out the creative nature in me? I don't know if that has answered your question, but if you're listening to this right now, Jamak, I'll just tell you, how can you be creative in your own way? How can you be unique in your own way? How can you bring out that creative nature in yourself and let the world see and benefit from it? I think that's the best way I can answer that. Now, the next question is from Annie Paul, and she says, what drives you? What drives you? Now, this is one question I ask my guests a lot on the podcast. And for me, my greatest drive is God. Because I realized that in the story of creation, I was able to see how God created something from nothing. Right? In Genesis, it talked about how let there be light, there was light, let this happen, and things started to form. And I was thinking that if the creator of everything could create something from nothing, then that means I also can create something from nothing, because I was created in his image and in his likeness, and that means I have that same ability, that same creative ability to create something. And I created a video about the creative power of our words, and I realized that every time you speak, things can actually happen from the things you say. So decide to use what you say for good. So I'll just say this, that what drives me is God, and I was able to see that if the creator of everything can create something from nothing, then that means I also can do the same. Now, the next thing close to this I can say drives me is knowing that what I do is helping someone. knowing that what I do is helping someone. I created something on Instagram to talk about sometimes one of the most important things that can keep you going is knowing that what you're doing is helping someone. It is enough to keep you going. So these are the two things that drive me, and knowing that these things are there for me every single time just makes me really happy. So now getting to the few last questions I have here. Now the next question here is talking about podcast, and it's from Goodness, and it says that what are the 5 things to note before I start a podcast? What are the 5 things I need to know before I start the podcast? And I would say that the very first thing you should know before starting a podcast is, number 1, define your who. When you've been able to figure out why you are making your podcast, then you should be able to figure out who should listen to your podcast. Like at the very intro of this particular podcast, I said that, hi guys, welcome back to The Simple Creative. I'm your host, Oladimeji Ajegbile, and this podcast is for those trying to start up something from nothing. So my who is the person who wants to start up something from nothing. So after you figure out your why, figure out the who should listen to your podcast. Then the next thing is structure matters a lot. Once you've been able to define who should listen to your podcast, or who you are making your podcast for, then you need to think about the format of your show. Is it an interview? Is it solo podcast? Is it documentary? Is it roundtable talk? Is it on air? Whatever it is, figure out the structure of your podcast. Don't just assume one structure. You can mix 2 or 3 together, but structure is very important. And the next thing is prepare ahead. Prepare for interviews, prepare for sessions. Like I did a couple of months ago, I wanted to host a particular session and I didn't prepare my script and I started stammering in front of the camera, and that was weird because I didn't prepare. So preparation is very important, either for interviews, for solo sessions, or for whatever it is. Preparation is important. And then this is one we take for granted, and I think is very important, and it is that you should write the way you talk. Like, let it flow naturally. Don't let it be forced. Like as I'm speaking to you right now, I'm doing it out of the wealth of knowledge I've been able to gather over the years. So you need to write the way you talk. And when you're writing your script, make sure that it is written with everyday words. If a 3-year-old can understand your podcast, then you can say that you're fulfilled, because it is as simple as possible for them to understand. So please take note of that. If it's as simple as possible, let your podcast be simple. Write the way you talk. And then the last one is to connect with people. Now, there's this thing I love to say a lot, that the way you tell your story will determine the response of those who listen to you. So if you tell your story in a way that it is scary and not interesting, nobody will listen to you. So put yourself in the position of the listener, right? What I'm trying to say, this story I'm trying to tell, if I'm the one listening to it on the other side, would it be interesting to me? So make sure that what you say can connect and resonate with people, people can relate to it. So all those 5 things: define your who, understand structure, prepare in advance, write the way you talk, and the last one is connect genuinely with people. And I think if you can apply these 5 tips, trust me, your podcast will be great. Like, it will be amazing and it will be strong. So talking about the last question, and this is from Lori, and she says, I love your content. What do you do? All right. So for many of you who don't know what I do, I'm a designer, and the aspect of design I focus on is brand and identity design. So that's what I do: brand and identity design. I help brands and businesses become better through design and creative thinking, and I call myself the brand architect. So mixing my background of architecture and design kind of makes it interesting for me, seeing how you can build up something from nothing, start up a brand, that really needs your services, into becoming something really amazing. So yes, that's what I do. I'm a designer and I'm also a podcaster. The other things I do, I create stock photos on Pixels. I create YouTube videos once in a while, maybe like every week. I host newsletters, but my main job is I'm a designer. And my other part, which is a creator, is I'm a podcaster and I create content on YouTube and Instagram. So a quick summary: my name is Oladimeji Ajegbile. I'm a designer and podcaster, and I love to share my journey and experiences through storytelling on Instagram and YouTube. So I really appreciate you guys for all the questions you asked. It's really been amazing, looking through all these amazing questions and answering the few I could answer. It really means a lot to me, and thank you all so much for everything you asked. Just a little bit of heads up about the next episode of The Simple Creative. The next episode will be starting season 5, and I don't know who my guest is yet, but you get to see the person on the next episode. And let me just go through a couple of appreciations for those who have been listening to the podcast. Now, this is from Sir Innocent, and he says, "You're doing a great job, Dimeji, and I hope to see more Ghanaians on the show in the next season." So, yes, definitely. My last episodes have been virtual sessions, and it has been with people who, who I really look up to, and I really enjoy their content and their creations, and I brought them to the podcast. So, for the season 5, I'll be hosting a couple of virtual sessions as well, and I would also be doing, one-on-one sessions in my studio here in Ibadan. So, expect a lot of persons. In the comments of this particular episode, you can decide to put up people you would love to see on the show for season 5, and if I can reach out to them, I definitely will, and I will get them to come through for the particular podcast. So we've come to the end of this particular podcast and this particular season of The Simple Creative season 4. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for everything you've been doing in the time past, and I hope to see you in the next season. Peace.